Hi everyone. So today's going to be an update on the development of my game Guardians of Subterrania. There have not been a lot of visuals to show off. All of the work that's been being done is behind the scenes, under the radar. It is all design work and a lot of writing and gathering of reference materials. It's my belief that in order for this game to be appealing to a wide array of different players and to have some degree of financial success, that it is really important that I spend an ample amount of time in the design and concept phase, just making sure that I establish really solid core pillars for the game's systems, the game's mechanics, the rendering and aesthetic, the audio of the game, and everything, every bit of infrastructure I need in this project to support all of that. And so I'm going to spend an ample amount of time in the design phase until I feel it is 100% rock solid. And then I will start moving into the prototyping phase. So what I wanted to do today was just show off some of what's been going on behind the scenes in regard to documentation, concepts, stuff like that. I'm not going to show everything because I like to keep some of this stuff close to the chest. I think that this is a good idea, and I think that it's commercially viable. One of the ways that I store some of the stuff that I'm working on is through the Google services here, and I use Google Drive and Google Docs and Google Slides for some of this stuff. Some of the stuff I'll archive that I'd used before. Some of this stuff goes into source. These are a lot of the, if we look here for examples, these are a lot of some of these very early iterations of trying to come up with the design I liked on the game logo. That worked, and I took community feedback, kind of landed mostly on a more saturated version of this one. But just keeping all of that stuff in there. Story was something that I went through several drafts on and worked with contractor writers, two different contractor writers, to sort that out. There are a lot of concepts in here already for some of these characters. And all of this is up, just very high level concepts. All of this stuff will be manually re-illustrated in vector artwork. So none of these raster-based images on some of these creatures are ever going to be used in a final product. And I'm going to change a lot of what I can with these. But some of these things are just some of the reference concepts that we got for some of the critters in here. And of course, like I said, everything's going to be re-illustrated. Some of these things, like the 3D models, are going to be built off of these concepts. So characters, rat, lizards, again, this is not an exhaustive list. There are a ton of different characters that still need to come out through here. There are a lot of high-level concept ideas, or I wanted to take bits and pieces from different environments or different worlds and start getting inspiration from those. One fun one was Fraggle Rock, from an old 90s or 80s TV show about these critters that lived underground. But I want to base a lot of this in what feels real. And of course, the world is fictionalized, but I need there to be convincing realness to this world. Some of the cool concepts here are solidified, like what World 1 will look like are like these banyan trees. I really like this look. A lot of Central America, South America influences from and some influences in the architecture from ancient Incan or Mayan architecture, but just grabbing a lot of stuff so I can see sort of how like algae and mold and things form on rocks that are exposed to water sources and stuff like that. Some of these things were where I wanted to sort of determine the type of level design that I'm going to do on this in the future, and I just grabbed some reference images. Some of these are like toys, D&D toys or things like that, or D&D plastic sets for their role-playing games, where I just wanted to look and see, like, obviously this is a desert biome, but just take a look here at the different ways that some of these things are constructed to facilitate gameplay. Again, there's some Fraggle influence in there. There is some documentation here on all the different social channels that I set up so I can track where I'm going to want to post my updates. Again, this is a living document, so these are just some of the first places that were set up, and it just lets me know that I can go back in there and that I do all of my media updates to those spots. Develop It guidebook, I think, is not used anymore. This was going to be where I sort of laid out all the different systems that I thought the game would need, like in the UI. Obviously, I'm going to need a HUD, some menus in the front end, a world map, an inventory. This was a working document where I came in here and made comments on my own work, treating myself as if I'm a split personality and I'm guiding myself. But these are mental notes for myself to come back and question myself on some of these decisions about there were obviously a lot of core pillars that I wanted this game to have, and then ended up having to be much further narrowed down. Story and lore was another one. This is not a document that I'm using anymore. What happens is when I'm done with these, I end up in just tossing them over into archive, but they're still being used at this point to inform the. This is my Midjourney prompt design, so I am using Midjourney to just generate reference images in the same way that I would grab reference images off of Google Images. So again, none of these AI generated images actually end up in the game at all. They're just visuals for me to look at and illustrate from and to take reference from. It's the same thing when I go into Google Images or I go into Pinterest, which is really good, and I pin aboard a ton of like previous types of artwork around games in a similar style or just real world images. So this is my prompt guide in Midjourney. I think some of my prompts are probably overly verbose and I end up fighting against Midjourney a lot, but it's a combination of grabbing reference images from Midjourney and Google Drive. So let's take a look here at my GDD. I'm going to try to zoom out just a little bit. Now the GDD is a little insane. It's 27 pages so far, and we can see the table of contents here is already on page 3. How many pages do we have? There's like 3 or 4 pages. But it is super detailed. So if I go down here to like game engine, we're using Unity. I'm using Weir, but again, I have a set of contractors that I hire, so I guess I can use the term we. This is the engine that we use, talking about the exact version that we're using and why I made the choice for this engine. And then listing out all of the different tools with links to those tools. This is good for contractors to let them know what specific versions of the tools we're using and for exactly what purpose we're going to use those tools for. And again, I haven't dived fully into the Unity project yet. And so these tools are going to expand and grow as more plugins are needed, recommended, or suggested. I talk about the workflow of using GitHub repository, and this is my repository. Again, like this is where the Unity project stuff goes in. So you can see here that 3 weeks ago was the last commit in there, but the Unity project is in there, and we can see that there's actually a build versioning tool. There is a proxy character in there. There is literally a input system and character controller. So there's stuff in there in the Unity project, but again, no artwork, no prototyping. I use the README here to link myself back to the Google Drive storage, and I also use it to link to the Trello board. I'm using Trello, not Jira, on this one to sort of track my tasks. I'm one person, so Trello is working well for me. In the past, I've used Confluence and Jira, but it's honestly overkill for what I need to do. I figure if I develop a really great forward plan here with a timeline, which I'm add on the bottom of the GDD, that as long as I follow that, I will hit those milestones and things. So even here, we list out what I want to do with the play testing and stuff like that. So every bit of nuance is in here. One interesting one is the game's core design pillars. So this is like those, well, the whole core pillars of the premise of the game. Like everything that I do for this game should support one of these pillars. And if it doesn't support one of these pillars, then it's not something I need to be working on in this game. So I wanted the front and center to be like the ability and skill system with like a really good feel to the combat system, like super fluid feel, the ability to break out of movement chains and block at any moment. Those are basics. And visually stunning and immersive environments. So I would include a little more info in this maybe in that I want them to feel alive. So you're never going to be in an environment where everything is completely static in that environment. It is like the Uncharted games. Every area that you go into, something is moving, whether it's small insects, whether it's plants swaying in the wind, whether it's water moving. Everything should feel dynamic and moving and as if the world is alive. And I'd also go a step further and say that it should feel like the world is moving on without you. Like there are things going on that don't involve what your intent is in this world. So these are the design pillars: character development and progression. I want the player to be able to put a bit of themselves in the player, but also build that player up to where when you get to that final confrontation with the antagonists, you feel very powerful. You feel as powerful as you could. And you feel as if you're a peer to and equal to that end boss, that end antagonist that you have to fight. You are peers, and it's not going to be easy, but you should feel empowered by that part. And then things that are unique to the underground world. And then I put in gameplay mechanics and the primary game loops, that these are the things you will repeatedly do in the game. There is exploring. It's going to have a very cool world layout with a golden ratio sort of spiral that goes downwards. And every world is at one point on that spiral. At points on the spiral will be a network of hubs. And from those hubs will be a spoke. So it's using the hub and spoke level design system. I think that I had a thing here that sort of showed that. I guess I didn't. But the hub and spoke design, where branches out into sometimes hidden areas, but also a network of those hubs. So there are tunnels or transits between those hubs. So this is what supports this loop of the exploration. The combat loop is an obvious one. You're going to engage with things that you need to engage in combat with. Artifact and shard collection is going to be really important, because these are going to be important artifacts that help build up your player's abilities to where you become that empowered individual. It's going to actually involve, the artifact system is going to involve a direct connection to the environment. So you will be directly connected to the health of the environment. So the way that the health system works is it's not just an individualized health. It is a globalized health based on the health of the world around you. It is a world of magic that feeds you as the player through these artifacts. And there are other things we're not gonna, but the ley lines are a very specific part of this. That's why I put them as a loop. Ley line management basically is that health of the world. So this is a loop of you trying to maintain the health of that world. It is connected to the combat loop, but it's also connected to the artifact and the exploration. Then there are secondary loops, which I considered less important, which are going to be, you're going to need to solve some puzzles to open up areas through looking at ancient language on the walls and things like that, and sort of deciphering that language through different means and uncovering, well, puzzles to open up hidden areas and things, or to collapse or open up parts of the caverns to discover some of these artifacts and things. And then, of course, there will be the interaction loops with NPCs and allies in the game, and then the story or the lore. I would actually put that more important here. This is not a super story dialogue heavy game. The core focuses are on exploration and combat, but the lore will support all of that, and it'll be deep. We talk about input mappings here. There are going to be different ones for the different controllers, things. I'm not going to go through the whole GDD, but again, every little bit of key mapping, all of the details are all laid out. These are going to have diagrams to them. If I go back up here, well, game genre is a short one and interesting. If you're curious what this is a fantasy action adventure set within the sword and sorcery subgenre of fantasy worlds. So it's not sci-fi, it's not horror fantasy. It is specifically sword and sorcery, or they call it metal and stone subgenre of fantasy. Just wanted to make sure folks knew that, and that it's clear in the description, and that it will involve metal armors, metal weapons, set in sort of in with hints of European medieval. It's going to be sort of a blending. It's very interesting. We'll flesh this out when I work with more of the concept artists. But let me get back to what I wanted to talk about here, which was these different worlds. So let's go to the Lytharian village for one. So there are going to be links in this document as we go through these different worlds that are going to show visuals. It's one thing to talk about it in a bunch of words, but it's another to visually represent that level. So one thing I'm doing right here is this is going to be like the beat sheet or the pacing of that level. So how much time you're going to spend doing these certain things. This might be a little difficult to see here, but if we can zoom in maybe. So like, see, you have exploration, you have zones of combat, the boss fights. I need to fix this. So the first one will not actually be a boss. This will be a mini boss here, and then actual boss just for that world. So there'll be a gatekeeper to the actual boss. And this will be like the sub boss, or what do they call them in the mob? They call them the sub boss or something in the mafia. But this was a diagram that I grabbed from a really competent narrative designer, level designer. And I'm just sort of copying their method here on how we're going to lay out where these hidden items are going to be and how much time you're going to spend doing those things. And some of these I'm going to stretch after I get this default put in here. I'm going to stretch these. This is just for the first world. The first world is going to be a tutorial sort of learning world. So these combat things will probably go down, smaller in scope. And the sort of combat you'll have in the tutorial mission will be like against friendlies who are testing you through a series of trials. It's not going to be actual combat with, and I should designate that. But this is like a pacing beat sheet. This will let me know how the gameplay feel and pacing of that level, so that I know you're not in any given spot where you have nothing to do or you feel bored. The pacing of beat sheets, the pacing of the level is important. The beat sheet is a little different. Sorry, I'm mixing up my language. So, for instance, on the beat sheet, beat chart, we sort of describe like some more things about the level, time of day, what the purpose is in that level, how the player progresses to it, how long should they be playing in that. 30 minutes may be pretty long. I should probably knock that down to like 10 or 15. We describe a bit of the color palette, describe some of the different NPCs you'll see in there, and then some of the mechanics that you may use, and then some of the hazards, abilities you'll uncover. There's more that's going to go into this, but I just started sort of fleshing this stuff out. And as we go through, you can see that the different worlds and levels are here, and each one will get its own separate bit of descriptions on what goes on in that level. And as we go through here, the level concept design will be the next thing that we put here, right? We'll put a level concept in there, and I will make a hyperlink out of it. Anyway, and that's how that's going to go for all of the levels. I think other than that, that's kind of where I'm at. This GDD is what I'm working on, and I'm focusing on this World 1. There is enough time and enough to do in World 1, the Lytharian Village, as a sort of a learning level, like learning the paces of how this world works. I'm not going to call it a tutorial level or tutorial experience, because it's really a whole world where there's going to be a ton to discover, explore, learn with all the friendlies and them going about their daily life. So I'm not going to call it a tutorial level, but under the hood, this is really what this is, learning about what's going on in this world, its lore, why you need to do what you need to do in the game, what will inspire you. And so I'm going to just spend the next couple of months. This is it. This is the goal, this very first world, and the other ones will come later, but this is going to be the demo. This is going to be the proof of concept, or the minimum viable product. And this is the thing that I'm going to build out. I'm going to hire contractors to do the level concepts for. And so this is where the focus moving forward is, just in that minimum viable product that I can get an executable on Steam. This will have the full menu system, save system, all of that stuff, launch into the level, and then all of the other worlds will come. But this will just be the demo. This will be something an executable that I'll start sharing with influencers and streamers, and try to put it together, a press kit over, and it will provide me with everything I need to do to show off all the beautiful marketing images that I need. It'll show what all of the characters look like, except your final antagonist. So there's going to be some stuff. You won't see those further worlds or that further development of the lore, or what those really nasty antagonists look like, the real challenge to you. You're not going to see images of those, and you're not going to see videos of those. We may tease those in silhouette or something like that, but this is going to establish the world and its characters for you, and some of the lesser antagonists. I think if I just hone in and focus on this for the rest of this year, for the next 5 or 6 months until December, and try to get this thing to this minimum viable product somewhere around December. I'm kind of hoping. I really need to do a milestone and timeline breakdown of this. I may go into the Jira tools just to sort of do a burn down chart is what that's called. A Trello may offer me some kind of a purchase upgrade for a burn down chart. I think that's what this timeline is here. So I may upgrade Trello to get that burn down timeline and start filling in some of these more in more verbose descriptive terms. But this has gone long already, and I just wanted to let folks know how things had gone. I also went, because I am also a web developer, I went in and coded up a website too. So I do have a basic website here going. There's really not a whole lot to it right now. The links work to the different things. But yeah, there's no images or anything to show off. I need a circular little mini social media logo made by the art contractor. I need to sort of transform this into a very readable, tiny little 50 pixel by 50 pixel logo. So we got placeholder in there. We got placeholder here too. I think this is a funnel over to the Discord. There's only like 8 people in the Discord. It looks like my LinkedIn group is growing at a much faster rate than the Discord. But feel free to go into the Discord. There are people, if I go into dev updates, there is discussion going on in here and stuff being shared and all. And of course, the update that I made just now is going to go in here too. Anyway, thank you all for watching. And again, feel free to come on over into the Discord here and join in and discuss anything you like, ask questions. I'll probably have an answer for that. All right, well, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.